What's up? Hello, and welcome to the Weekenders. It's Max and Bobby here with you today for this episode. We're in the middle of July. We're almost in August, which is right like knocking on the door of college football, and almost at September, which is knocking on the door of the NFL. And we've already got football content on the timeline and on Netflix with the quarterback documentary just releasing, and people posting all types of camp video and talking about football. So we're right around the corner. We're almost there, man.
We really are. Media days just now starting out this week in college football. You got camps coming down just right down the way. It'll be the Hall of Fame game before we know it, Maxwell, and I can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're here today on this episode to talk about the AFC West and preview the AFC West. We've done a few of these previews now, so you guys know what to expect. But the AFC West is one of the more interesting divisions in football because, you've got three teams that have some really good quarterbacks. You got, I'll say, two teams that have some really, not just really good, Hall of Fame level coaches. And so this is a division that's going to be very hard to predict, top to bottom, to be honest with you. And one of the divisions in the AFC that has three teams that are going to be probably some of the most talked about in the division and in the NFL this year. So without further ado, let's jump right into the AFC West. And let's start off with the biggest storyline in the AFC West this year, which, in my opinion, I think we already know what the Chiefs bring to the table. We know that the Chargers kind of are the team that are kind of on the rise, and we know what they have to prove and everything like that. The Raiders are the Raiders. I mean, we'll see what life looks like for them without Derek Carr. But to me, the biggest storyline is the Denver Broncos, because the biggest thing was they traded for Russell Wilson last year, and Russell Wilson was supposed to, change the trajectory of their franchise after. I mean, the Broncos haven't been to the playoffs since they won the Super Bowl in 2015. So they're looking for a fresh start with Russell Wilson, and that was the complete opposite of what happened last year. They were a disaster. Their offense was putrid. Although they have some good weapons and some good pieces, defense looks like it was pretty good all year, but offensively it just looked crazy. And really, head coach Nathaniel Hackett, got fired, so he obviously got a lot of the blame for it. But Russell Wilson, I mean, there's a lot of questions about, is he washed? Is he what happened last year? Because from Russell Wilson sort of being the perennial Pro Bowl quarterback he was in Seattle to now playing he was a shell of himself last year. Like it was a big shock for the NFL world. So to me, the biggest storyline in the AFC West this year is Russell Wilson, the Denver Broncos, and Sean Payton, who took the Broncos job after so many years with the Saints and taking a year off to do television. He took the Broncos job, and it feels like people are confident that he can turn things around there in Denver. So, Bobby, I ask you, will Russell Wilson and the Broncos bounce back this year under the tutelage of Sean Payton?
Oh, man. I got to say, the biggest problem with the Broncos last year was Russell Wilson, and it just feels like he's done. The amount of money they're paying him, it feels like that's the problem. But you can't really weasel out of an issue that bad. They're going to try with Sean Payton, but Sean Payton kind of feels finished too. So it feels like I don't know if Sean Payton can bring back that magic of the Drew Brees era teams of the Saints, then maybe he can revitalize Russ into something workable. But I mean, this is Russell Wilson is a man who he was getting clowned on by Patrick Starr during the Nickelodeon game. That was a different level of low, man. Like I just really I'm really out on Russ, and I think I just don't think they can recover from it. Defensively, like you mentioned, they're good, but I just you have to, especially in this division, have a good quarterback to compete, and I don't see it out of them this year.
Yeah, this is the year where the questions will be answered. Like, was last year Nathaniel Hackett's fault, or was it Russell Wilson? Like, is he really like coming down to the twilight of his career? Last year was so odd because like we were everyone was like, all right, what's going on in Seattle? Like like everyone was like, let Russ cook. And it seemed like the friction between Pete Carroll and Seattle was really odd. But then Seattle has this great year with Geno Smith, and they go to the playoffs. And then Russell Wilson has the year that they had, and it's like, all right, well, maybe Pete Carroll was onto something and he saw sort of like the regression of Russell and the issue with like kind of letting him, run around and do what he wants. I mean, you heard people talking about how, you know, Russell Wilson um, causes more sacks because of the way he moves around in the pocket. Like there was like so many things, so much slander for a guy that again, Super Bowl champion, perennial Pro Bowl guy, like had a Hall of Fame trajectory. I think he still probably is on that trajectory, but now I think this year is where we see, all right, what was it more Russ or was the coaching just that bad? I will say this about Sean Payton. Um, I think this could either go one of two ways. Um, it could be a situation where, like Mike McCarthy, where he comes back and he's able to sort of, do just enough to maybe get that team to like competence. And it doesn't look amazing, but it doesn't look as bad as before. Um, or he could like really like overhaul and make that offense sort of look like wow, like the like last year and this year was night and day. Sort of like I'm trying to think of an example to compare it to. Um, I can't think of something right now, but yeah, I mean Sean Payton's gonna either completely like make Russ look like the old Russ, or we're just gonna see him probably put a band-aid over that offense and maybe they do just enough to make a wild card playoff run. I think the biggest thing is we don't know. And I think I'll add this one thing too, and I've been rambling a little bit here, but um, Sean Payton in New Orleans, and a Panthers fan, NFC South guy, know a lot about kind of what was happening there. I think that situation was. I don't think I necessarily blame Sean Payton for getting out of New Orleans when he did, because once Drew Brees once Drew Brees' career was ending, like it seemed like there wasn't really a plan in place for the next the next run. It was sort of just like Drew Brees is gone. We'll work with whatever veteran quarterback we can get and do our best. Like I don't know if there was a disconnect between the GM and the ownership, whatever. There just didn't seem to be like all right, here's what we're doing long term. It just seemed like, oh hey, like Drew's gone, like we still have all these other pieces. Let's try to make it work. And in the NFL, you can have great pieces on your team, but at the end of the day, you need a quarterback to win championships and to compete. And the Saints didn't really seem to be interested in doing that towards the end of Sean Payton and Drew Brees' career. But my biggest thing about Sean Payton has always been he has this arrogance that I think has gotten him in trouble, especially in the playoffs. Like those last few playoff runs with Drew Brees, like some of the decisions they got unlucky in some ways, but some of the decisions were just Sean Payton, I think, just really uh, drinking his own Kool Aid, and people don't really want to necessarily talk about that because the Saints are such a lovable franchise, and Sean Payton's a great coach. But I think that is going to really play an interesting part this year because, again, the Broncos want to get back to relevance, and uh, we're going to see, like last year, what really was the issue, like, and we're going to see how much Sean Payton's effect is going to be on this team moving forward.
Absolutely. I'm gonna have to move. I'm sure you can hear in the background what's going on. So, got a little mower situation next door. I'll be right back. Yeah, I mean that's my thing is with New Orleans. It didn't seem like he or the organization was up for a full proper reset, a full rebuild, and I don't know. This feels very kind of like cobbled together. Like it's not. I I worry how Sean Payton's going. Like, is he up for another reset? Different team, different quarterback, different environment. Um, I mean, you never know in changing environments. Look at me; I just went inside because you never know what's going to happen. You know, in my situation, lawnmower guy shows up. I got to go inside. You got to be adaptable. Can he be adaptable and really get used to this new organization? We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. So to me, that's the biggest storyline. I mean, I think there's other things that we could talk about, and I think we'll touch on them as we go through each team. But to me, I think the Broncos are going to be they're gonna have the biggest light shined on them this year because of um, the people involved, the organization, and again, they're competing in a division where um, it's one of the more competitive ones in the league. So we'll see what happens with the Broncos this year. All right, let's move on to talk about these teams. We've got the Vegas over-unders there as well. And we're going to talk about how we think each team will do um, this season. And we're going to start with the Las Vegas Raiders, who this is a new chapter for their team because um, they're moving on from Derek Carr, uh, who was their longtime quarterback, obviously. And now you're kind of moving forward with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, who, um, had a decent run in San Francisco, but they decided they wanted to move on. Josh McDaniels is still there. Um, Devontae Adams is still there. They still got some nice pieces in Vegas, but this is a tough division, and I think because of a lot of reasons, the Raiders are sitting at a 6.5 line from Vegas. Now their record last year was 6-11, so this basically saying, all right, they're either going to be about the same or worse than last year. So, Bobby, um, we we both agree that the Raiders will be under 6.5 win total this year. But Bobby, tell me why you think the Raiders are not going to be any much better than they were last year.
Well, to me, I don't feel like Jimmy Garoppolo is that much of an upgrade. I also don't feel like he's that much of a downgrade. To me, the Raiders feel like they're a bit in stasis from where they were last year. I don't see a lot of improvement there. I could be wrong. Garoppolo has shown his ability in the past to be very, very good, and maybe a change of scenery will help him. I don't know, but I tend to trend down towards the Raiders. I'm not super big on them.
Yeah, I'm not a big Josh McDaniels guy. Don't really love the Raiders' ownership and infrastructure. I think that they sort of botched the situation there. I mean, good on them for getting Devontae Adams. Like that was really a great grab for them. But I think they sh- had they sh- really. should have done more sooner to make that roster a little bit better around Derek Carr, which I don't think Derek Carr is all that great anyway. But like, I think the Raiders are sort of kind of beyond, a little behind the eight ball here for a lot of reasons. But one thing I will say, and probably why I would stay away from this line in particular, is that Jimmy Garoppolo. One thing I can say about him is he's the type of quarterback that finds a way to win games. Like the stats don't look pretty all the time, but for who he is, like in San Francisco, in New England, like the guy, there's some quarterbacks who are not going to be great on the stat sheet, but win games, and there's some quarterbacks who are amazing on the stat sheet, but find a way to lose games. Garoppolo's a winner, so like, although I'm not crazy about McDaniels, I feel like Garoppolo, Devontae Adams, um, and McDaniels being a guy that Garoppolo's familiar with, which is probably a reason why he's there anyway. All I'll say is I would not be surprised if the Raiders shock some people and maybe won a couple more games than this line has them at 6.5. Like I could see them at 7 or 8, just because they'll win some games that they're not really supposed to. Garoppolo will make some things happen. Devontae Adams will make a play. McDaniels, again, I mean, not great, but those years that he had Tebow, they were pulling rabbits out of their hat every week to get those wins. So, I think like again, like I put under there, just for like, take integrity, but I would not be shocked if you told me the Raiders found a way to scrap their way to 7 or 8 wins.
I mean, you have a great point with Tebow. He got Tebow to win a playoff game, something that a road playoff game, something that is still truly what the hell. That's so weird.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and even the run leading up to that was like insane. But yeah, I mean, the Raiders do have a really tough schedule. They play a lot of teams that you kind of expect to make the playoffs this year. Obviously, they're going to have to scrap in their own division with 3 potential playoff teams, and they also see the Bills, Steelers, Lions will be tough, Giants, so Dolphins, Vikings. So I mean, don't love the schedule, but we'll see with them. I think the Raiders are probably a candidate to be like a Caleb Williams, Drake May destination too. And
That's what
it's
they
funny,
should do.
it's funny too because I'm like, yeah, they could win their games. They could also get like the number 1 pick. Like I feel like either thing could happen. Like you never know with this team, but yeah, totally agree. I think they probably should be in the Caleb Drake May sweepstakes for sure.
This is if there's ever been a year to fully tank in the NFL, this is it.
Yeah, yeah. And Caleb Williams playing for the Raiders in Las Vegas would be so badass.
Oh my god,
Like,
what perfect fit.
yeah, like perfect vibes, fit, personality. Like, I think, yeah, I think that like I would love to see Caleb Williams in a Raiders uniform. But all right, let's move on. We just talked about this team, the Denver Broncos. Their line is set at 8.5. Last year they were a 5-win team. 5-12 were a disaster, as we already kind of spoke of. I've got the over on that, and I think for me, it was a slight over. So I think like Sean Payton finds a way to get this team to 9 wins. They're probably knocking on the door of a playoff spot. Just because I think that like Russell Wilson probably isn't as bad as we saw him last year. And I think even if he's not as great as he was in Seattle, I think Sean Payton can find a way to make their offense look good enough to be able um, to make something work there, them to win more games, and then defensively, like we already know they're set. So I like them a little bit over. I'm looking at their schedule now. Like it's very it's workable. It's much better than the Raiders' schedule. I mean, they're going to play teams like Washington, Chicago, Houston, Cleveland. Um, and I think they'll play New England. Like they'll be able to I think um, get a game against the Chiefs, the Chargers. So I like the Broncos schedule a lot better than I like the Raiders schedule. And I think with Sean Payton, I think he can get this team to a respectable 9 wins at least. If you told me they get 8, I wouldn't be surprised at that either. But I like the Broncos to hit the over slightly here.
Yeah, see, here's my thing. I think they improve upon last year, but I think a jump to a 9-win team. I don't think Sean Payton takes that roster to 9 wins. I think in his prime, when that organization was rolling, when it was tight knit, and in New Orleans, it made sense. But it just isn't. That isn't the case in Denver right now. That isn't the case with the offense right now. And I, look, we like you mentioned, he struggled without Drew Brees when Brees retired. It didn't make sense in New Orleans without Brees. Now he's going into a situation where, frankly, I think Russell Wilson was boosted by the organization in Seattle. The amount of stories we heard coming out of Seattle that he was an issue, he was a problem, and kind of holding him back. I kind of buy him. I think he was buoyed a little bit there at the end by the Seahawks, and I think in Denver you have a situation where you have two guys who benefited from having a strong, great organization at that time in both situations in Seattle and with Peyton in New Orleans, and now that they're out of those, can they make it work together in Denver? I think they have a couple wins improvement, but 8.5 to me is just a little too much for a project I frankly just don't believe in. So I'm going to go under. Like you said, it could be boom, it could be bust, but I'm feeling comfortable about this busting.
I think you make an interesting point about Russell Wilson's like effect on the locker room because that was a big story last year. Like the way, like it seemed like he didn't really get along with like some of his teammates, especially on offense. There were stories about how like the players didn't like how he had his own office and that like they didn't like how it seemed to like there seemed to always be something about like him from a personality standpoint. And to me, I do have to wonder how much a coaching change actually fixes that. Um, you know, and it could. I mean, those guys could come in and the culture could change, and it's like, all right, like we're gonna move on from all the stuff last year. But if Russell Wilson, still has friction with teammates, then it can definitely cap the ceiling of this team. Um, I will say I didn't mention this before, but like their coaching staff, like not just Sean Payton, but they've got Vance Joseph as their defensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi as the offensive coordinator. I do sort of like that staff to go along with some of the talent they have. Um, I think it'll just depend on how they put everything together this year. But this is not like a with the Broncos and the Raiders. Like I don't have strong feelings about either way, right? Like the over or the under, I feel like can happen for both of those teams. I don't really feel like I can see I can see both ways going, but I'm taking the over just because, like I said, I think they probably get a favorable schedule and maybe some maybe Sean Payton can help like with the ceiling of that team a little bit.
Yeah, really across the board in this division, them being matched up with the NFC North, that's just very helpful across the board, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, all right, so we're on to the next team, which is the Chargers of Los Angeles, and their Vegas line was set at 9.5. Last year they went 10-7. And the Chargers are in an interesting spot because they broke through to the playoffs last year, and a lot of people are ready to sort of put the crown on Justin Herbert because of his play. But the Chargers really are a weird team because um, the way they lost last year to the Jaguars was humiliating. I mean, to be up, what were they up, like 24 at half, and they lost the game. Like, that's bad enough, but also, like, there are major questions with Brandon Staley, and he's only in a year. This is his third year. So now it's like, from an organizational standpoint, it's kind of nervous because you're in year coming up on year 4 of Justin Herbert, and if they fire Staley, he's on his third head coach in 4 years, and that's just like not where you want to be. If you're an organization with a quarterback that is as talented as Justin Herbert, what you need to be successful as a team is stability. And right now, that's not promised because we don't know like if Staley is the right guy for this job. But with that said, we both have the Chargers at the over. Tell me what you like about that team.
Well, honestly, in retrospect, it's pretty insane that the Chargers went as far as they did last year with the amount of injuries they had throughout the season. They were pretty snake bit, and to still make the playoffs through all that, I think is something. Of course, it gets overshadowed by getting completely embarrassed by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not great at all. Just a total disaster of a collapse. But I feel like they improve. I genuinely do. If they can stay healthy, if they can keep a clean bill of health and everything, Justin Herbert to me, I think he's just improving year after year. I think he takes a leap, gets a lot better. I think the over here is just a. I love it. I absolutely love it. Especially if they stay healthy.
Yeah, I think this could be Justin Herbert's like MVP year. Like, I think this could be the year where Justin Herbert's just like, F it, we ball. Like
Yep.
I'm gonna take over. I'm gonna show that, like, people are gonna be like, oh, maybe Justin Herbert's the best quarterback in his own division. Who knows? Like, the hot takes are gonna fly. I think Justin Herbert is ready to take over. I've been frustrated because, like, I was a person that didn't really see it with Herbert out of college, and then when he came into the league, my mind changed like immediately. I mean, he's been a special guy, but it's frustrating because I think he has the ability to be the best quarterback in the NFL. But if you've watched between Anthony Lynn and Staley, like, it's frustrating. And I'm not even a Chargers fan, but it's like frustrating to see how those coaches have like botched literal games with the playoffs in the line. Like, it's maddening. So I'm hoping for Herbert's sake that the Chargers can figure that out, and just for Chargers fans in general. I mean, they've been through a lot. Philip Rivers era where they had a lot of good years but could never really figure it out, and then those poor fans in San Diego have to see their team move to LA, and now like still might be a fan of the team, but it just seems like, again, like you're gonna waste another great quarterback's career if you don't figure out like how to put the right pieces around him and how to coach. So, but anyway, besides all that, like I think this is gonna be a good year for the Chargers and a good year for Herbert. Looking at their schedule, I think Justin Herbert's gonna be the better quarterback in most of these games. Like, I'm looking at the schedule, and Justin Herbert will be the best quarterback on the field in every single game, except when they play the Chiefs and the Bills, and even that's debatable. You might think, some people might think Herbert's a better quarterback than that one. So, I mean, that's a good sign. I like their offense still. They still got Austin Eckler. They still got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, the offensive line. So, I mean, I think this is the year where the Chargers just have to go out there and ball. And hopefully Brandon Staley has learned from past mistakes and they can get out of their own way and really make a run in the playoffs this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a year they could do it. I will say, bring up their history. Every time it looks like they're going to, they find a way to just, it just derailed by some like horrible luck. I remember there was a year, and I think it was 2010, where they had like every single statistically we're one of the best teams in NBA or in NFL history and missed the playoffs entirely. So like that's the type of luck we're dealing here with the Chargers. But we're basing these picks off reality rather than I don't know the boogeyman hiding under the Chargers' bed, that keeps cursing them. So I'm not really worried about them. I think they figure it out this year.
Yeah, I think they do fine in the regular season. I think playoff is like a different conversation. Like it's hard to trust Chargers as an organization in the playoffs, but regular season, I think not like if we're just strictly talking about can they win more than 9.5 games, I think that's the easiest bet. Um, One of the easiest bets on the board this year. I think this is a too much talent, to not win, at least 10 games this year.
Yeah,
Um,
a
so
worse version of them won 10 games last year.
exactly. So yeah, I think it's easy over for LA. All right, last team in the division that we're going to talk about um, is the Kansas City Chiefs. So their line is at 11.5. I made a mistake because I put down under on the dog. I actually meant to do over. I was looking at so last year they were at 14-3, and I was looking at like 14 as the number, but 11.5 it's gonna be over. We both agree on that. I think the Chiefs, Mahomes, Andy Reid, you know all the names, you know all the guys. I think I'll say that like if you told me the Chiefs ended up with like 11 or 12 wins instead of like 14 or 13 like they did last year, like that wouldn't surprise me that much because the division is tougher. Um, and then they still have to play teams like the Jaguars, the Eagles, the Bills. They have to go. They play Cincinnati. I mean, they play a tough schedule, not to mention their own division. So, you know, 11, 12 wins. If you told me that, like, I'd be like, okay, I could see that. But at 11.5, I'll take the over.
Yeah, I mean, 11.5 feels very attainable for Kansas City. This is their conference. They get a lot of. They do have a tough schedule, but obviously the Eagles come to town. You got Buffalo in KC as well, and you have to. I believe you have to go to Cincinnati if I have that right.
That
Um,
Cincinnati game is that Cincinnati game will be at Kansas City. So
Oh,
yeah,
they're all at home. So Arrowhead is absolutely just packed at home. So for me, I feel like they have a lot of advantages. Obviously, as we mentioned, the NFC North is, the division they're playing. I feel like they're way better than every single one in that division. Um, I don't think there'll be a problem at all. I just don't see the losses there. I think this schedule sets up very very good for KC. I feel like they're really on a roll. They have figured out the. I don't want to say they figured out who they are. They already won a Super Bowl before, but they feel like they're shifting gears into like that dynasty type of mode that I think they can and will become. They're not there yet, but I think they're shifting gears from really really good team to this might be the next team that just dominates the league.
yeah, and I mean, this is a year where, um, if I'm not mistaken, wait a minute, hold on. Let me look up. Um, are they going for a three-peat this year, or am I tripping?
No, this is their first one they've won since because they won in the 2020 right before COVID hit, and then got bounced by I think they got bounced by Cincy twice or
It
something
was
like that.
yeah. Their last Super Bowl was 2020 against San Fran. They lost to Tampa Bay, and then Cincy um, went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Rams. So okay, so not a three-peat. They're not going for a three-peat, but they're going for um, this would be Pat's or the Chiefs' third Super Bowl win. So I mean, still a big accomplishment, to go for number three here, but yeah, I mean, or I guess back to back, you could say back to back would be a good accomplishment because they haven't done that yet. So
Third
yeah,
in what, 4 or 5 years, something like that.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, back to back, I guess is their goal. But so yeah, so that's on their mind. They're going to be everyone's target. Everyone knows. Everyone wants to beat the Chiefs. I think that they're used to that pressure. Um, yeah, this team is just so fascinating. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I guess if I'm looking for anything with the Chiefs, it's can Travis Kelce, as he's getting older, taking a lot of hits, can he still be effective? What does the offensive line look like? The Chiefs last year were really able to get away with not having great receiving options. This year, they lose Juju Smith-Schuster to the Patriots, I believe. Um, so, I mean, to me, it's like, all right, what does their receiving core look like? What is Travis Kelce going to be like? I think that's probably the most interesting thing about that team to me. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the over under, like I said, over 11.5 is a definite in my opinion. But I think there's some things we can look out for the Chiefs, um, especially when we talk about them like being a Super Bowl contender, which I believe they are right as of right now, definitely. But just things to watch as we go through the season with them. Um,
Yeah, no, and speaking of the receiving core, I mean, they lost Tyreek Hill and replaced him with just kind of a band of pretty solid but not great wideouts, and it worked great. So you kind of feel like they're going to keep finding a way to make it work in
yeah,
KC.
yeah, exactly.
But
Uh,
Kelsey's age and like how well he keeps going, that's gonna like the floor is gonna go out from under him at any point. That's just how tight ends work. So I don't think it's gonna happen this year, but it could happen at any time. You never really know.
yeah, it's not like the thing about Travis is like he's been pretty healthy. Like it's not like Gronk where like Gronk was always kind of banged up. You know what I'm saying? Like Travis Kelsey, he's 33 years old. He'll turn 34 in October. So I think that's still pretty good for a tight end. Probably has one more 1,000 yards type year left in him. But I mean, it'll be interesting to see. He's definitely bread and butter of that offense, and um, we'll see kind of like what they're able to what they look like from a receiving core standpoint moving forward. All right, so those are all the teams for we did over unders for. So just to recap, Bobby and I both have the under for the Las Vegas Raiders win total line of 6.5. The Broncos win total line was 8.5. I had the over. Bobby had the under. The Chargers win total line was 9.5. Bobby and I both had the over. And for the Chiefs win total line of 11.5, Bobby and I both had the over as well. Um, all right, let's do some rapid fire questions to end out this preview. And let's start with the MVP of the AFC West. Um, I think this could be a year where Justin Herbert is the MVP of the entire NFL. So of course I've got him as my AFC West MVP. Who you got, Bobby?
I'm going with Patrick Mahomes. It's boring, it's chalk, but I just feel like he is on a different level quarterback wise. And I think he's just going to continue to churn out MVPs, league MVPs. I think in terms of the division, I really could see a battle between him and Herbert just over in the overall race. I think that's a great pick. But I don't know. Some tells me I just have a feeling that Mahomes just keeps it going, keeps this thing just pumping like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, not a bad pick. Definitely chalk, but yeah, I mean, it's Patrick Mahomes. like,
Exactly. Yeah.
um, yeah. All right. Coach of the year for the AFC West. Um, You've got Brandon Staley. Tell us why.
So this is where I make it up for my super chalky and MVP prediction. I'm going to go with Brendan Staley because I feel like the Chargers make that massive leap. And usually I feel like whenever there is a massive leap, the coach, you usually just give it to the coach who, was at the helm there. People, I feel like Coach of the Year awards always are given out to the ones who make shocking jumps, and it's never the guys who constantly win competitive like every single year. Nick Saban doesn't win it every year, for example, in college football. You don't have the same guy like the top dog constantly winning it. So I feel like the rising star, the guy who's right, like literally on the way out, if he doesn't get this sorted out, I think him having a good run, in the regular season, and usually these are regular season awards, but this isn't official. It's we're just coming up with awards on the weekenders, so it's one of those things where he you see this happen to the. I think you might get for followers of the NBA, you might get Dwayne Casey, where you win, you're very good, win Coach of the Year in the regular season, blow it in the postseason, and then get fired. I could very much see something like that getting pulled off for Brendan Staley, but you never know. I just have a feeling that this team is going to improve drastically. You and I see it. I don't think everyone else sees it yet, and I think he's going to get a lot of credit.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. My pick is Sean Payton though, because I think just thinking back to how badly the Broncos offense looked last year, if Sean Payton turns that thing around and they win some games, I think, I mean, again, they don't give out Coach of the Year for divisions, but like Sean Payton might be a NFL Coach of the Year candidate if he does that. I mean, similar to Brandon Staley, I feel like if Brandon Staley turns the Chargers into, one of the best teams in the AFC, he could get the Coach of the Year for the NFL. Same with Sean Payton. I think if he does a good job turning around the Broncos, and makes Russell Wilson look like Russell Wilson again, he could definitely be in the conversation for sure.
Yeah, if he can do it, if he can turn the Broncos around, he absolutely deserves it. I'm with you.
Yeah. Winner of the AFC West. This kind of just like is more confirmation bias of like my Herbert MVP pick. Like, I think I don't see a scenario where like, well, here's two things. First point is this: I don't see a scenario where Justin Herbert would win the MVP if he wasn't the division winner of the AFC West. So I think he'd have to do that. And the second thing I'll say is schedule wise, I like the Chargers schedule a lot better. So let's say the Chiefs get 12 wins, like I feel like it'd be easier than the Chargers to pull out 13 or 14 just based on schedule. So I think the Chargers win the AFC West this year.
Yeah, I can see that. My only problem with the Chargers and their schedule is, and I don't feel like the Rams have this problem as much, but I feel like every time the Chargers play a home game, it's a road game, and I don't think they more than any other team have no home field advantage whatsoever. When KC goes in there, it's Arrowhead West. Hell, I think you could genuinely make an argument that the Raiders might be the second favorite team in Los Angeles, for that matter. I mean, you live there, so you probably have a better view of that than I do. But I do not see any sort of home field advantage for the Chargers, so that's why I'm giving the edge to KC. Obviously, they have a tough schedule. They have to play Philly, who will be locked and loaded. I think they're going to be great. But I give the edge to Kansas City here, just because we've seen them do it. We've seen what they can do. And I'm going to take the proven commodity over an upstart that I believe in, but might not turn out.
Yeah, it's hard because, I mean, the Chargers were truly San Diego's team. Like you said, folks in LA sort of more root for the Raiders and the Rams here. I mean, if I don't disagree with you, know that the home field advantage for the Chargers isn't great here. But if I just to play devil's advocate to that point, looking at the teams that the Chargers have to play at home, there aren't too many fan bases that I feel like are overwhelmingly like known for travel, right? So like the only ones that I would be worried about would be like Dallas. Like Dallas fans are gonna pack that stadium for sure. Um, and then Buffalo fans maybe, but
Definitely.
like the rest of the teams are kind of like just about as fair weather as Chargers fans. You got Miami, Chicago, Detroit. I don't think really travels that much. Baltimore doesn't
I
really travel.
I feel like Chicago would be a big one. Like that feels like a big transplant sort of deal, I will say. The other ones I
Yeah,
agree with you. Miami can't even fill their own stadium sometimes.
yeah. I mean, the Chargers are definitely going to be at a disadvantage when they play the Raiders, possibly the Broncos, possibly the Chiefs. But like, a lot of these teams, like, you know, are I feel like they'll be fine. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. I think we've identified the two contenders for the AFC West winner for sure, and that's the Chiefs and the Chargers. Last place, no need to really discuss. We both agree it'll be the Raiders. Um, Now, like I said earlier, I can see the Raiders finding their way to like an 8-win season with Garoppolo and McDaniels. And then in that case, if you're a Broncos fan, you might be a little bit nervous about being last place again. But I think the Raiders probably will be last place for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. I'm with you. I think and I think the problem with the Raiders too is they're too proud to bottom out. They should bottom out. Get Caleb Williams. We need to see that man in a Raiders uniform. It would be so cool. Would sell so many jerseys. I'm about it. I'm about that.
I mean, you had the Raiders front office saw Caleb Williams play in the Pac-12 championship in their stadium. Like that should have like been all the convincing you needed. They should have been like, you know what, we're gonna tank the season. Like this, we need to have this guy like in our stadium like every Sunday, in 2 years. So
Yeah.
um,
This
totally,
that's a conversation for for another pod, but best Caleb Williams location for the NFL would be that's a fun topic.
yeah, for sure. All right, last question to round out the pod here. How many playoff teams are coming out of the AFC West? We both say two. I think uh, for me, it's the Chiefs and Chargers. I think the Broncos are going to make a push, but the AFC is brutal, and I just don't see like more than two teams coming out of any division in the AFC.
Fully agreed. Fully agreed. It's way too tight out there. That conference is unreal. Just thinking about the contenders. You could have the Chargers be like the lowest seed. That's saying something. That's not even talking any mess on them. That's just how good that division is.
Yeah, I mean, I'll correct what I just said.
Conference.
There's 7 spots, so you know, 3 teams will come out of one division. So it could happen, but like I'm not necessarily gonna like predict it, for this division because I think it's one of the tougher ones in the entire league. So, um, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Have we? We haven't picked one division to come out with three, have we? In the AFC,
Um,
we went two with the East. We're going two here.
yeah. Hold on. Let me go back and check.
Surely it's not going to be the South, though, right? Like Indy and
I think it depends on what Anthony Richardson looks like. But yeah, the South, you've got. I mean, Tennessee could be there. Tennessee. Oh, 3 teams. So Tennessee, Jaguars. I think Houston's not going to be
no,
like
not yet.
even with Stroud. Like I think Houston's going to be. So yeah, this might be it, and I'm just going to double check. So last year, 7 teams came out. So we had Chiefs out of the West, Chargers out of the West. Bills came from the East, Dolphins came from the East, Bengals from the North, Ravens from the North, and Jaguars came from the South. So maybe there's not necessarily 3 out of one division because it's your 4 teams out of the top 4. You have your division winners, and then your 3 playoff teams could be one other team from another division, but not necessarily 3 teams from one division unless it just happens that way.
Yeah,
so I think we have it right. It could be 2. It could be 2 for all but one division.
Yeah.
So I think we've done West, North, and East, and so I think we met our quota for the 2. And so when we do the South, I guess we'll all have one team coming out.
Yeah, and that checks out. Given the AFC South, I think that makes sense. So at least we're doing our math right.
Yeah. If you didn't get anything else from this podcast, Bobby and I could do math.
Just barely though.
Oh gosh! All right, y'all. Well, this is a fun show. AFC West should be a fun division to talk about. We'll see you guys next time. We're so excited that the football season is almost here because as much fun as basketball and summer league and everything's providing us, I'm so ready to talk about football, man. I can't wait. So
absolutely.
Keep locked here with us here at the Weekenders and Multiplicity Media, and we'll see you guys next time.